George Washington once said to James Lloyd in February 1799, "The great mass of our citizens require only to understand matters rightly to form right decisions." At Global Philadelphia Association, we viewed it as our duty to our members and to the global positioning work we're doing on behalf of the Philadelphia region to host the forum we have invited you all to attend today. And now, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you John Smith, the board chair of the Global Philadelphia Association, a committed Philadelphian who has been shepherding the association since June 2010, when the GPA was formed. John Smith.
Well, good afternoon, and let me add my own welcome to that of Zabeth's, and a particular welcome to our candidates and to those who are coming today to represent them. I'm delighted to have Lynn Abraham here. Welcome,
Thank you,
Lynn.
Mr. Smith. Thank you.
And on behalf of Jim Kenney, Sean Nasratullah. And finally, on behalf of Senator Anthony Williams, Omar Woodard. Senator Williams extended his apologies for not being here, but he had to attend a vote in Harrisburg. We are expecting that Nelson Diaz will also join us, but we're going to get started and hopefully have a good discussion with the folks who are here. Lady and gentlemen, I know that this has been a long road, and May 19 lies just ahead. We appreciate your being here and look forward to your views on a set of subjects that haven't really featured in the mayoral forums to date. And that is, what is the international dimension of Philadelphia? And what are the challenges and the opportunities that globalization has brought to our city? You will receive questions in these areas, and we look forward to the thoughts that you have to express. Zabeth has said just a bit about the Global Philadelphia Association. I will add only two things. We are fundamentally about raising the awareness of the citizens of Philadelphia as to the importance of their being an international city. And secondly, we're about radically enhancing the global profile of Philadelphia. These mayoral candidates, and whoever should win, will not be able to get his or her job done unless they understand this dimension. And so we have taken a great deal of effort to create a program which we call Globally Minded Leadership. The Globally Minded Leadership program has been in force for the last 3 months. In the course of it, we've issued bulletins on a weekly basis and will continue to do so right on up to the November election, so as to help these candidates understand these dimensions of the roles that they will be undertaking. One of you is going to be at the helm of our city, and we're counting on you to steer us well and wisely. I'd like to take a moment to recognize Tanya Steinberg, the Executive Director and President of International House Philadelphia. Tanya, are you here? It's hard to imagine that only 2 nights ago, this place was a Korean extravaganza as International House honored the country of Korea. And it's been transformed back into this very attractive facility. Thank you for making it available to us. It's particularly fitting to be here because in the course of a given year, over 800 students are residents here at International House, representing scores and scores of different countries. And the programs that are conducted here make IHP a center of international culture. Today's forum is a key event, and we're honored to have 2 outstanding leaders of internationally related organizations as the co-chairs of the Global Philadelphia organization's Globally Minded Leadership Program. They are two folks who probably don't need much introduction, but I'm going to at least point them out to you. The first is Nancy Gilboy, who's seated in the right corner. Nancy is the president of Citizen Diplomacy International, and as you will know, Citizen Diplomacy International is the bridge between the city and the State Department and holds the view that every one of us, every citizen, has a diplomatic role to play on behalf of our city. And seated next to Nancy is Craig Snyder, the president of the World Affairs Council of Philadelphia. The World Affairs Council is known in some quarters as the most prestigious podium in Philadelphia. Presidents, foreign diplomats, CEOs of major 500 companies, and other key figures come to that podium to share their visions and their thoughts for us in Philadelphia. So Nancy and Craig, thank you so much for the help that you have given to us. There are many people here who deserve specific recognition, but I'm going to focus for the moment on the Consular Corps of Philadelphia. I'm not sure how well appreciated the Consular Corps is, but it is a group of 30 diplomats, each representing a different country, here in our city. The Consular Corps Association is the oldest consular corps in the United States of America. Not surprising, of course, because foreign countries were already reaching out to us when we were in the process of forming our democracy. It's a great pleasure to be able to recognize some of them individually. I hope I haven't missed anybody. First, the chair, the president of the Consular Corps Association is Krista Bard, the consul for Lithuania. Krista, where are you? Over here. And why don't I finish reading all the names, and then you can give them one round of applause. Andrea Canapari for Italy, Oliver Franklin for the United Kingdom, Michael Scullen, Michael for France, Anna Maria Keene representing Salvador, Christina Matilla representing Finland, and Christine Pfister representing Switzerland. And we have a former consul, a distinguished gentleman, Harry Schaub, who is also with us here today. And I believe that Michael Alexander, representing Yaron Seidman, the Consul General for Israel, is also here. These resources are exceptionally important to our city and will be exceptionally important to you if you should be the mayor of our city. And we hope that you will be able to make ample use of these resources as you carry out your duties. Lastly, I want to introduce the gentleman that has been on our screens for a number of years, Steve Highsmith. Steve, the former NBC 10 political correspondent, the producer and host of PHL 17's In Focus program, the director of community relations and local programming for PHL 17, and the host of numerous events, including the Mummers Parade, where you will have seen him year after year. Steve, thank you for agreeing to moderate our panel, and welcome.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Zabet. And what a beautiful group of people. Thank you. And you obviously are intelligent because you're here, and you have the concern that you have, and we appreciate that. And I will just reiterate one thing that's been said. If, as important as you are, your cell phones are with you, please silence them or turn them off if you can. That would be appreciated. And basically behave in a manner that your mother would approve of. And other than that, there are no rules for you. As for the candidates, there are a few rules, and we'll get to that, and their surrogates as well. Now, we have a policy which is a normal policy for forums, and that is the candidates have so many demands on their time that should they not be able to arrive on time but do arrive later, they're welcome to come on up and sit down. We won't go back over any questions, but we'll just pick up wherever they are. It's said that 90% of success is showing up. We'll leave it at that. It's tough when you're not here. It is. But to be fair to them, there are a lot of different demands on their times. This has been an exhaustive process. There have been more than 70 forums that have taken place in this campaign. And when you look at it, not every candidate has made every one. I think some candidates have made nearly every one, but it's very difficult. And then you add the amount of time they have to do with fundraising and whatever their other duties are. You can see it's difficult. So you make whatever judgment you want to make on that, and we'll go on. So I would like to thank, in addition to what I've just said, I'd like to thank again the Global Philadelphia Association, the World Affairs Council, CDI, and of course International House for being such a great host here this afternoon. Now, our rules are pretty simple. In addition to you behaving in any way that you like, that your mother would approve of, we would like you to have the knowledge that these candidates are going to try to be kept to about 60 seconds. And there is a person right down in the front. Can we see you? Okay. Flash up a card just to see if we can see you there. Okay.
It's hard to say. But
Hard to see. So what I'll do is you keep doing it anyway. Our eyes may adjust to the sun. And what I'll do is I'll try to keep time here, and then we will go on from that. In addition to that, the candidates or their surrogates, if they should mention another candidate, the candidate that was mentioned gets to respond, or the surrogate gets to respond. And really that's about it, and there'll be a closing remark that'll be about 90 seconds for each one. And the questions have been created by the sponsors and by me. There are also some cards that are being circulated, and if you happen to pass any of them around, they'll be collected, and they'll be brought up to me, probably collated beforehand, and then we'll mix them in as we go along. And for the first two questions, we'd like two of our sponsors to actually ask those questions. Nancy, would you please begin? You have the first question for our candidates, and we will begin with Lynn Abraham.
Okay. First, thank you all for coming and for caring enough about Philadelphia's image on the world stage. My question is, trade and foreign investment are important to creating jobs in the city. What will you do to promote this, and what international experience do you personally bring?
Thank you for that question. I believe that the global economy is manifested by making sure that we all appreciate the world is getting very, very small, and that global investment and leadership go hand in hand. I would not certainly wait for anybody to come to me. I would go to any interested party. I would look around the world and see what are our trading partners doing, and make a personal visit to any country, any industry, any entity that I believe would be welcome to come to Philadelphia. And I would go there as a cheerleader and as a leader of the city of Philadelphia, because I think that's most important. By making sure that you are a global leader, I would hope that the press would treat the next mayor, myself, with some dignity and respect, and not consider these travels junkets, which I think is unfortunate. I believe that going out into the world and seeking business for Philadelphia is a job creator, is a
That's right. You can
I'm
finish
sorry,
the thought.
a job creator, a cultural ambassador, and I think this is the great way to go. And I have been all over the world, and I've been in almost every country that is named in our consular corps except Salvador, but I hope to get there.
Thank you. Hassan.
What I will express will be my understanding from the policy position that Jim Kenney has taken and expressed and shared with public in various format. What I think comes out of it for me, and this is why I support Jim Kenney, is that he has embedded in his economic position, act locally but think globally. And much of his economic policy, that I'll address your question, is based on practical approach to it. For example, he's really big on the container business that is embedded in and natural to our location at the shipyard. And that would directly tie in with opportunities that I think is a way to grow the local economy, which is exports. And by being where we are, real estate between New York and DC, and the location being right on the river, I think his focus on that kind of an approach indicates a practical approach to promoting export and global stage.
Thank you, sir. Omar.
Thank you, everyone, for having us today. My name is Omar Woodard. I'm the policy director for Senator Williams. And so from that perspective, while I can certainly talk to you about his policies, his initial background was as a business person. He was a small business owner. He worked for PepsiCo, and so has, in his formative career experience, a real understanding of what it takes to grow and scale a business. And so with that, he moves into a policymaking position. And what he's been doing over the last 26 years as a state representative, as a state senator, is ensuring that Philadelphia and Pennsylvania is well positioned to take advantage of international trade opportunities. He's been highly supportive of the Department of Community and Economic Development's international trade space, where they have 19 different individuals who are responsible for helping Philadelphia identify international investment opportunities. Broadening that out, supporting our Director of International Business Development here in the city will be an important piece of work that the senator will continue as mayor. The most important thing I can say is that we have to identify the assets through which we can best attract international trade, life sciences, our eds and meds, commercializing research. And these are policy positions that Senator Williams has taken during the campaign and the types of things that he'll continue if elected mayor on Tuesday, May 19th. The last thing I'll say is that, yes, we should absolutely be supporting junkets, as they call them. These are opportunities for mayors to go and be effective ambassadors for the city.
All right,
Unfortunately, other candidates have poo-pooed those ideas, and so we'll have an opportunity to talk more about that throughout the course of the day.
You made a reference to another candidate. Did you want to respond? Have you poo-pooed that idea? I thought I heard you say you might.
Au contraire.
Okay, just want to make sure I was hearing correctly. All right. Craig, your next question, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you again for being with us. The modern history of the Philadelphia Mayor's Office indicates that whoever wins this year is likely to serve 2 terms, which means that your administration or those for those who you are representing a candidate would be in office well into the period that's going to be required to plan for the 250th anniversary of the United States in 2026. How would you use that historical milestone to bring deserved international attention, the focus of the world, on Philadelphia for that occasion?
And Hassan, why don't you start this one?
I think the position that Global Philadelphia Association has taken to promote Philadelphia as a heritage city would be a perfect launching point. I think we discussed about this, and Jim Kenney is definitely behind that as a major opportunity to seize. And I think we have enormous amount of firsts in the city, from the firefighters to the library to the hospital. The list goes on and on. And to be the first city to be on the World Heritage Cities would be a great opportunity. And I think all the positions that Jim Kenney has expressed in his policy positions lead to that kind of an approach based on his understanding and support of immigration, on multilingual education. All of those are tied to the idea that we cannot be a global city unless we deal with education, poverty, and economic conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Woodard.
Being a global city would, in fact, support our efforts to invest in education, economic development, and public safety. The vision of Philadelphia, and this is why USA 250 is such an important opportunity, is an opportunity to bring all pieces of city government together in partnership with industry, in partnership with our nonprofits and foundations, great world-class foundations in our city, and have a commonly held vision for what Philadelphia could look like, and also articulate a commonly held vision for the crucial role that Philadelphia has played in the promotion of democracy. We are the cradle of American democracy, and in that we are a unique asset for America to articulate its value in the world. And so having a mayor who can articulate that, who understands that, and then uses government to bring together all of those different pieces and lead an effort, not just have a seat at the table, but to lead an effort, is a crucially important piece of work that Senator Williams has talked about during the campaign. A global Philadelphia and having a vision for a global city will improve our educational outcomes, our economic development outcomes, and make our neighborhoods much more safe.
Thank you. Ms. Abraham.
I think the important thing about being a World Heritage City, which I am sure Philadelphia will be, is that we will have by that time, under my administration, a great airport well on its way to achieving the $7.1 billion expansion plus our port, our rails, and our roads. Having been a delegate sent by the State Department to the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, in Warsaw, Poland, I can tell you that by that time I will have reached out to every person on the globe to try to get them to make sure that they visit Philadelphia, to make certain that they know that I'm a welcoming mayor and that my administration will bend every effort to make sure that people know that this is a welcome city, expanding on the knowledge that we have from places like International House and these great organizations which support today's program. So we are going to have a lot to celebrate. In addition to that, the idea of promoting worldwide peace, places that we can go to and visit and have them come here to establish the peacemaking role through economics, through understanding, through dialogue, through cultural exchange, and through trade and understanding is a great way to make sure that the 250th anniversary of Philadelphia will be a global affair, acting locally, thinking globally.
Thank you. Next question, there's a professor at the University of Louisville named Savage, and he did a study about what makes a great city in the world, and he boiled it down to 4 categories, and 2 of those categories were cosmopolitanism and charisma. So the questions that I have, starting with Mr. Woodard and going to all of them, is what is it that you see about Philadelphia that is unique in its either cosmopolitanism or its charisma that either exists or could be fleshed out more to exist, that could be marketed so that the rest of the world and even Philadelphians see Philadelphia as a world-class city?
Absolutely. It's a great question. Philadelphia is one of its great assets is it's one city, but a city of neighborhoods with distinct culture. And so one of the more interesting things that we've heard the senator talk about during the campaign is investing in our neighborhoods by creating a neighborhood-to-neighborhood local tourism initiative. The first thing to do is to identify that our neighborhoods are strategic assets and that the people in them know best. We have historical preservation assets. We have great and rich diversity in our neighborhoods. And so what he's called for is partnering with SEPTA, partnering with our bike share companies, and Visit Philly as well, to attract and increase local tourism and build the local and civic pride in our neighborhoods. By doing that, we can then elevate the cultural diversity and the opportunities that each of our neighborhoods have and brand our neighborhoods as destinations for every person, whether you're a Philadelphian or whether you're visiting from China. This is the opportunity by branding our neighborhoods and making every neighborhood great as a destination that we can improve the quality of life across the city.
Thank you. Ms. Abraham?
I think Philadelphia has both charisma and cosmopolitan nature. I believe, first of all, with regard to our charisma, we have just the most charming city, beautifully situated, great riverfronts, great assets in the city, parks and theater and cultural. And sometimes we are too modest about our cultural attractions. This must be exploited. Our great city in the whole is just a welcoming, warm city, very knowable, very navigable, and we are, in spite of what the New York Times said, extremely friendly. And I don't care what they said. They're wrong. They got it wrong. As for cosmopolitan, the wonderful thing about Philadelphia is we have the most extraordinarily diverse communities in our city that we don't pay really enough attention to in exploiting for cultural diversity, for richness, for museums, heritage, dance, music, the whole 9 yards. I have been out to all of these festivals and neighborhoods, from the Indian, Tagalog, South Asian, Southeast Asian, European, you name it, and we have it. Food, we have culture, language, history. Just the historicity of Philadelphia is just so rich. This is a thing that we have in full measure.
Thank you. Mr. Nasrullah?
I think what we see that from both the candidates' position, that Philadelphia has assets that range in the whole spectrum, what is needed to make it into something that is attractive, cosmopolitan, and attract people. It needs leadership. And I think what candidate Kenny has done is he has reached out, and I've been involved in other campaigns to reach out to many neighborhoods and much of the immigrant community to understand and be able to highlight the strength of diversity that's out there. And Philadelphia as a whole, I think, has many of its assets that are very understated and not put out. I think it will take a leader to take the message out and be able to capitalize on the things. For example, Philadelphia, I think, has the restaurant scene that has boomed. We have the home of John Coltrane up on Ridge Avenue that people don't know about. So music, culture, arts, all of those are assets, but it requires leadership to get the message out.
Thank you. Well, let me get more specific on one thing. And Ms. Abraham, you mentioned this, and I'd like each of you to take this, starting with you. And it has to do with zeroing in on one aspect of what you've talked about. You all have done a pretty good job of saying how great we are. But in terms of branding the city so that when the world looks at Philadelphia, hears that name, what they think of. Yes, it's all right if they think of great restaurants, but they think about that in New York and San Francisco. You know, what are they going to think about? And you brought up the idea of peace. Could you brand Philadelphia? Would you brand? And what would you do to brand it to help to be that image in someone's mind? Philadelphia as the city in the world of religious tolerance, of liberty, of freedom. What would you do?
Well,
or is that a bad idea?
I don't think so. I mean, this is how we started. We started our nation breaking away from an intolerable burden placed upon us by Great Britain. And no disrespect to my friend Oliver Franklin, I love Great Britain, but not King George III. And Ray Raymond, too, by the way. But I can tell you that I think that the city, the brand, I would say, is the international host city, that we have so many cultures and languages and greatness here. We should be a beacon of peace and hope. We should talk about all of the assets that we have in this city. And since our history is that we demanded freedom and fought for our freedom, we understand freedom fighters around the world, but in a way today that is acceptable around the negotiating table. We've watched world conflicts everywhere spiral out of control because of differences of religion or thinking. We've seen cultural monuments decimated by people that were World Heritage Sites. The most horrible thought that I can think of is ruining our heritage because of ideology.
So if I may, what do we do? What would you do as mayor that would say, we're the city that is going to do more than anybody else to try to put a stop to that?
Well, look, we're not the United Nations, and I think it would be foolish of me to step in front of the United Nations, but we would enter into diplomacy and work through the United Nations to assure that people who come to Philadelphia know that this is a beacon of freedom and liberty and understanding. Not just tolerance. It's not enough to be tolerant.
Are we more of a sanctuary? Do we bring back the sanctuary image to Philadelphia?
Well, we already are a sanctuary city in many ways, so I think this is just capitalizing on what people know about our history and the history of this country. Boston, Philadelphia, Virginia, this is all about the history of our country, but I think the United Nations, I think for mayor, I think I would work more closely with the United Nations to make that body seem more effective than it currently is viewed around the globe.
Okay, each of you get more time on this. I'll follow up in the same way. Mr. Navratilova, what would you do?
I would say two words would describe Philadelphia: innovation and change. And I would say this draws directly from our favorite son of the city, Benjamin Franklin. In his day, what he did is what we need to follow that spirit today, to really put on the world stage that Philadelphia is the home of innovation and change.
The question was about making it whether or not religious tolerance can be the brand.
And so the change would be that religious tolerance and diversity is welcome. It's a place where everybody can flourish, a place where it's safe. And those are the values that can be brought into the idea of innovation and change.
And what would Mr. Kinney do that no mayor has done up to this point?
I think highlight that he did it in 2008, for example. He had suggested the office of New Philadelphians. And the same idea has been floating around in policy positions about giving welcome America, or welcoming the new Americans as a place where people can come and flourish, and that would include economic as well as religious and other freedom that people cherish.
Do you believe the image of Philadelphia is that of a sanctuary city? Should we be more of that to all comers who believe they're beleaguered in some way?
Yes, right. I believe that's incorporated in his policy positions.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
There's no doubt that the next mayor should be focused on making sure that Philadelphia is a destination for everyone, domestically, internationally, whether you're a tourist or a business. There was a recent poll that was asked of Western and Eastern Europeans, where would you like to go to start a business? And most people said America. Then they asked them what city, and Philadelphia wasn't on any of those lists. We haven't talked enough about what Philadelphia means, what Philadelphia really means, and what it could mean. And the senator's talked about this. Through his legislation, he sponsored creating an Office of New Americans at the state level, supporting the Pennsylvania DREAM Act in terms of diversity and tolerance and inclusion. We need to be a city that is committed to making the promise of democracy real, because it was here that it was articulated and written. And so the things that we do as a city government should be reflecting that goal. We have the first public schools here, but our public schools, some are good, some are great, but most are not. We have the first hospitals here, but healthcare access is uneven. And so we need to kind of close the gap between the things that we did and led on and the outcomes we're achieving today. And that's the type of mayor that he'll be, is closing the gap in those areas.
And the feeling you have about this being a sanctuary city, that was a pejorative term in some people's view in America 30 years ago, 20 years ago. How do you view it today?
What the senator has said is this has to be a city that welcomes all and attracts all. Whether you're an empty nester, whether you're a millennial, or whether you're an immigrant who wants to build a new life and build a business here. We have 20,000 Philadelphians who are Chinese, 12,000 Philadelphians who are Korean, and others. We have an incredibly diverse city. We should be welcoming that and see it as a strategic asset rather than a liability.
You brought up schools, so let's go to that topic there. There are schools that in this city are struggling to teach the basics, and the basics aren't enough to really be competitive globally for those individuals and for the city. What would you do? Obviously, the mayor doesn't run the district, but what would you do as mayor that would somehow, in a meaningful way, make a difference so that language and cultural programming would be in the foreground, would be seen by the world as what people ought to do with public school systems? And we'll begin with you.
Sure. First and foremost, Senator Williams has run on a fully funded public education system. And the role of the mayor is to secure the funds to do it. He has a plan that raises $200 million that doesn't just close the current $89 million budget gap, but begins to invest in our schools, in our teachers, and in our students. He passed a bill last year that mandated that public schools teach the occurrences of genocide in our history, the Holocaust, slavery, and the Middle Passage. The importance of this was to make sure that students understand the world in which they live and the history that they come from. Now, that's not to mandate curriculum because this is what kids need to learn, but it's about making them prepared when they graduate to be global citizens. And so that's the type of work that he's done in the past and the type of view that he has to fully fund public education, to make sure that full curriculum provides for not just language, foreign languages, but also cultural competency. These things are together. The senator is a huge supporter of implementing language access across Philadelphia, entire city government and row offices. So these things of a fully funded public education system that provides clear foreign language and cultural competency supports to students is a vision that Senator Williams has for the city.
Ms. Abraham, what would you do about language and cultural programming in the school system?
I always thought it was silly when I went to Philadelphia's public schools that I started to learn Spanish in the 9th grade. It's a total waste of time at 9th grade. I should have been learning it in 2nd or 3rd grade or even in kindergarten. So the first thing I would do, obviously, is this is a cultural rich ground right here where we're sitting in International House. And the University of Pennsylvania, Temple University, and all of our universities have a wealth of foreign students from every place on the globe. They ought to be, as part of their curriculum, I would suggest, being able to go into the public school system to talk about their culture, their language, their history, their background, to make sure that the children understand in our smallest grades that there is a big world out there. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a place called the Global Leadership Academy out at 46th and Girard. These young people are traveling around the world as part of their education to know that 46th and Girard is not the crossroads of America. I think that, and I think to broaden the horizons.
We're at time here, but
I'm sorry.
No, but what I'd like to do is there a policy that you will do? Can you commit to a level of funding where how would you influence a school district in a short answer?
Well, obviously, I mean, we're struggling with funding now, so part of a full funding formula would be cultural exchange programs, travel, understanding the world, everything about the world, and making sure that there is a cultural and linguistic awareness at a very early age, so that children learn this when they're in first and second and third grade, not when they're in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So you front load all of those issues and use your funds wisely, and making sure that students from places like Penn come there, and also have cultural travel as part of your trip. I mean,
Very good.
it was nice to go to Washington, but I'd rather go to, Warsaw.
Okay. Mr. Nesratu.
Jim Kenney's position that institute pre-K for all 3-year and 4-year-olds across all Philadelphia communities is a perfect place to start incorporating cultural programs and other themes that need to be worked in early. He's also a big proponent of the community schools. He has put out positions that we want to start community schools that are based on bringing in different social services, including cultural programming, into the schools. Of course, funding is a big thing, and he has ideas that he's expressed in various positions about working with the governor to improve the funding position, as well as creating funding within the city through prudent budgeting, the zero-based budgeting ideas that he has talked about. But all of this really means that you have to start early, and he is making it clear in his positions that it has to be in the pre-K level to create the stage for people to really embrace diversity.
All right. Now, these are 4 quick questions. And you touched on one of them a little bit, but we need a declarative answer, and it's not this first one, but there are 4 quick ones. Now, the first one is sort of a more or less thing. And we'll begin with Lynn Abraham. If you're mayor, will there be more parades and festivals or fewer parades and festivals?
Hopefully more, because I love attending all of them. I've attended almost every
Okay,
festival.
so more. We'll
More.
take that as a more.
That's a more.
Mr. Nesratullah.
More.
Mr. Woodard.
More.
All right. Will there be more bikes or fewer bikes on the streets?
More.
More bikes?
Yes, more
Yes,
bikes.
more.
Yes.
Will you keep the mayor's office of Immigration and Multicultural Affairs?
Yes.
Yes, and expand.
Yes, and expand it.
And last question. Now, remember, you two in particular, you're answering for your bosses. Right. Which would you rather watch on TV if they were on at the same time? Real Madrid versus Liverpool, or the Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots? Lynn Abraham.
Real Madrid.
I will not be able to answer that.
I'm going to get in trouble. He's a big football fan. American football, not football.
Okay. All right. I don't know what to make of any of that, but I found it interesting. All right. Now, again, you've touched on this, at least one of you, a little bit. If you've visited a lot of countries, just give us a short list, summarized by continent, if necessary. But we do want to know, what countries have you personally visited? And is there anything in that experience, so if you give us a quick list, and then anything in an experience in your travels that has informed who you are as you work day to day, live day to day? And we'll begin with Mr. Nesratullah.
I'm not fully aware of his travels. However, I know that his immigrant roots is very important to him and his family. So I would think that he has a good appreciation of other cultures that he incorporates. So the first introduction about his family is about his cultural roots. So his awareness of culture is very high in his mind, and I think that's the way that he would bring in new ideas. And for specific questions about his travels, I think I would refer to Lauren Hitt, who's here, and after the...
Mr. Woodard?
Most recently, the senator has done a significant amount of international travel. Most recently, he traveled to Israel with the delegation on the issues around war and peace, and loves to travel, in fact. And hopefully, after the campaign, he'll find an opportunity to do that. I doubt that, though. The rest of your question, however, the second part of your question.
Has he, and you may not know this, has he told you any story about what he's experienced in those travels that informs who he is?
Sure. As a Christian going to Israel and seeing kind of the nexus of Islamic, Jewish, and Christian values, and a space that was very important, it was a story he tells frequently about how he was able to situate himself amongst people who might have believed differently, but people who had shared values and a common vision for a better place wherever it was they were, whether Philadelphia or Tel Aviv. So that's kind of part of his Quaker education and upbringing, trying to bring people together and do that kind of thing. But the Israel visit was one of the most impactful for him. He talks about it frequently.
Thank you, sir. Lynn Abraham.
Too many places to mention. China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Morocco, Turkey, Spain, Sicily, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Germany, all over the world. The major country that I've not yet visited is India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, but I hope to get there. And I almost went to Leptis Magna, but couldn't quite make it because of the issues in the North African peninsula. I think the thing that informed me the most about who I was, of all the experiences I've had in about 40 countries around the world, was when I was standing on a street in Shanghai and saw so many bazillion people. I never saw so many people walking in all of my life, and felt for the first time in a real way that the world was so much bigger than sometimes we Americans think, and that we don't think enough about global situations. And I think the impact of seeing just thousands upon thousands and thousands of people, none of whom looked like me, and I certainly didn't look like any of them, and I couldn't read any sign, and I couldn't go anywhere. That sort of woke me up, and I felt the same thing in South Africa and North Africa, too.
Thank you. I would think that probably most of the folks in the room don't agree with Chesterton when he said that tolerance is the virtue of the man without convictions. We talked about tolerance a little bit earlier, but there's a very basic sort of openness and tolerance that exists that maybe doesn't exist in Philadelphia. In fact, there was a time when you'd have a hard time finding Independence Hall in Philadelphia by the signs. That changed. But there are some other basic things. What would you do to make Philadelphia, and we'll start with Mr. Woodard, the easiest city in the U.S. for non-English speaking people to visit, to work, and to live?
You have to fully implement language access, and thanks to Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez, who has, and hopefully all of you will vote for the charter amendment coming up next week, to implement full language access in the city of Philadelphia. And what that means is that the city government is required to be able to communicate with all of its citizens, and not just some. And that really gets back to, I think, the senator's vision of One Philadelphia. That any Philadelphian can access their government and get exactly what they need from it, without having to go through a significant amount of barriers and hoops. So implementing full language access, ensuring that the police department can fully access and engage with every neighborhood, that the streets department can do it, that our signs are both English and other, and understanding which neighborhoods have significant populations of whatever group. These are the types of things that bring government closer to the citizens. And so fully implementing language access in every city government department across all row offices as well, which includes sheriffs, which includes the DA and others, will allow the city of Philadelphia to become much more closer to the people it represents.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abraham.
I think expanding our reach with regard to sister cities and our consular core, so that we can be sister cities with as many places as possible and have fully accessible language capabilities. I think the One City project is good for locals, but I think that when tourists come, I try in my worst French and my worst Spanish to try to help people, and my elementary German, but it's insufficient. So I try to be a goodwill ambassador. So I think that many people I find are looking for a helping hand or a place where you can get some information. And I think our tourism marketing board is doing a great job in putting out brochures in multiple languages, and I think that generally helps. And having a cultural exchange program where people are going out to the tourism areas and volunteering their services and welcoming people into their own homes, where you can have someone who is linguistically and culturally attuned to the visitor. That makes it a lot easier for some of our visitors. And I think using places like International House volunteers, with the Pope coming here, we're going to have people from all over the world. We have to make sure that millions of people, like we hope, at least 2 million people, have some way of communicating with locals.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Nasrullah.
I think the ballot question is an important one. It's a great start. I mean, that would make it permanent and require all city services to be offered in multiple languages, and that language access is very important. But I think one thing that can be done and should be done to make it more attractive to foreign visitors is learn from other cities. You go to any European or Asian public space and they have audio guides in 30 languages. I think we also have the United Nations type audio guide in the school system here that is not promoted widely. I think those are the things that we could easily do to at least acknowledge, number one, there are other languages there, and that the government is making positive and affirmative steps to make that available. So those are some of the ideas.
All right. Ms. Abraham brought up something, so I want to ask you two quick tax questions. Would you be in favor of taxing the people who are opening their homes, even if they get a small fee for it? Or would you say that's going a bridge too far? Would you, Ms. Abraham, just go down the line?
Well, I think for special events such as the DNC and the Pope's visit, I think it's a bit much. However, if you're in the Airbnb business where you're regularly renting your property out as a business venture, then one should pay business taxes. But it's a little much to be taxing people for the few days that the Pope is going to be in town. I think it's a bad move. It's a disincentive for people to be welcomed here. I think it's something that we should not even think about for those two purposes.
Mr. Nasratullah?
I believe that this two-event driving the discussion is premature. Knowing the Kenney campaign, I think their economic advisors would take a practical approach to understanding how other cities where the B&B business has grown has handled it. Sometimes it's done by volume, percentage of year, et cetera. And I think they'll take a proper position based on that, but not on this issue that's coming up now.
Mr. Woodard?
I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the senator about that, so I wouldn't want to provide an answer.
Well, let me bring
Could
up
I clarify one thing, Steve,
Yes.
just for a second? I mean, if I have a B&B, then I'm in a business. So I'm not talking about people who are already in the business of renting rooms or spaces or hotels. I'm talking about just some nice person who wants to open his or her house for visitors here. Then I think that it's a real imposition to impose taxes.
On taxes, is there one? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Woodard.
I just would like to be clear that the tax that would be levied would be the hotel tax, right? So that would go, it would be split between Visit Philly and the Convention Center Bureau, which would invest in our capabilities. And so the idea behind it makes sense, but, particularly for Airbnb. So I understand the point, but I would need to talk to the senator about it.
All right. Well, let's stay on taxes for a moment. Is there a tax provision, just pick one if there is one, that you would propose to make Philadelphia more attractive to foreign enterprises? Mr. Nasratullah.
I think some kind of a innovation zone idea where things come in or a new business come in, like the Jumpstart Philly, I think is an idea right now on the books. Promoting that could be a great way to attract foreign businesses to know about it and understand the impact of that as a startup. Would be a great place to start. I don't know if you're aware that there's an exemption on your gross receipts, or now it's called BERT tax, if you start up a new business within Philadelphia. Those are some of the ways I think it could be expanded, but that idea is still a good one to use as an attraction for foreign investors.
Mr. Woodard?
Three things. The senator is quite interested in promoting, as Mr. Nasrallah said, the exemption for business taxes up to $150,000, but also making sure that we promote the Jumpstart Philly initiative. For any businesses that come here, they receive a tax credit based on the number of jobs that they create. And then finally, he has a long-term tax plan to change the uniformity clause, which would drastically reduce not just our wage taxes, but also eliminate over time the net income portion of our business income and receipts tax. That would attract significant jobs to the city of Philadelphia over a 10-year period, estimated between 50 and 75,000 jobs. And so in terms of taxes, you can have your short-term on exemptions and new jobs created, but also a long-term opportunity to attract new businesses and new investors to the city of Philadelphia.
Ms. Abraham?
Well, I think besides the BERT taxes, the wage taxes and BERT taxes that we've been talking about, since we're in a global frame of mind this morning, I'd like to promote more the EB-5 programs that are available for investors who create jobs in this area. $1 million at the minimum with a production of at least 10 jobs, or in areas that are in transition and need the extra income, $500,000 will be a great way to encourage net inward migration of peoples from around the world who have money and capital improvements. And I think obviously it's a pathway to a green card and citizenship for convenience or for any other reason. This city has to be more welcoming to immigration inward. I'm not talking about just nationally, of course, but internationally as well. And there's a world out there waiting to come here. If everybody had the chance to come someplace, they'd come first maybe to someplace in Europe, but eventually they'd want to come here because this has been portrayed, and it is true, as the golden land. So anything we can do to increase business and job creation through our EB-5 program and others similar to it, we should encourage.
Right. And we talked about trade missions before. If you were to have your first trade mission, where would you go? What's the first place that you say, we should have been there a long time ago, or we were there, but we need to go back? Obviously, trade missions are done with a lot of preparation. There's a lot of talk that goes on beforehand. That you just don't plop yourself there and buy a ticket. But nonetheless, where would you target first, Ms. Abraham?
Well, I think we have to look at a couple of places. First of all, I think Colombia has been overlooked. Chile has been fairly well exploited because we're a net importer of so much fruit. Colombia is the largest flour exporter, I think, in the world. I think Israel is second. Then I'd also look more towards the Eastern European area, which has been woefully underserved and underrepresented. I think there's tremendous talent and industry in Eastern Europe, so I'd like to encourage that. So Central South America, Middle and Eastern Europe, and there's probably other places. I think Russia is an untapped resource, although our differences with Mr. Putin have been in full play on our press. But it's a huge country, 9 time zones, and just millions of dollars worth of importable things that we can send to Russia, and they need every one of our innovations.
Hassan?
I would say, again, this would be my opinion. I have not coordinated this response with the campaign, but I'm one of his in his policy team, so I would definitely advise
Where do you
this.
want to go?
Africa. We're missing in action in Africa, 100%. Produce as well as infrastructure. Infrastructure would be export-oriented, produce would be import-oriented. That's the market. In my visit to Sierra Leone and West Africa, I saw China and Lebanon is absolutely taking over the market, and we are totally missing in action. And that would be an area that we would definitely go after.
Mr. Woodard?
Sub-Saharan Africa is the largest opportunity in the world. We have 90,000 individuals who are immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean, and so there's a tremendous opportunity to build small business relationships and exporter relationships. But of course, the Middle East has significant opportunities to invest in infrastructure, and particularly the UAE has been a significant investor in Pennsylvania, particularly in the infrastructure space and in real estate. And so those 2 areas would be absolutely crucial.
And we're joined by Judge Diaz.
How often do you see competitors kiss each other?
That's a Latino custom, you know. Particularly if they're a woman, you know.
Are you seated? Good. All
Thank
right.
you.
Well,
I
what we'll
apologize, by the way.
No.
That 95s, whoever becomes mayor's got to fix 95.
Well, since we just wrapped up our very last question, since we just wrapped up the last question that we asked, we'll let you answer it as well. And that question, we have been talking about trade missions and mayors going on trade missions. Where would you go? Where would you target? What do you see as an opportunity that we have just been woefully not paying attention to? So as soon as you get into office, as soon as you can arrangement and do all the prep work, where would you go? Where would you put Philadelphia's resources?
Well, you know, you've got to first, we have our neighbors to the south, which we sort of ignored a lot. And they have a resources probably in the $800 billion resource in terms of purchasing power. And we sort of ignored it. It was only under the John F. Kennedy period that we looked at some of the opportunities there. And Mexico has a great need, obviously, for some of our energy opportunities. And then you keep going south, and then you've got the whole Central America situation in which we do some trade, particularly in the fruit area. And then you keep going south, and Argentina used to be the breadbasket of all of South America, and they've got some major troubles related to the government and inflation. And then you keep going to the other place, which is probably the most opportunity that we have, which is Brazil. Brazil's economy is probably one of the most growing economies. It's got incredible opportunities in terms of resources. It's not that far. We have a working force there which is pretty much educated. If you go to Sao Paulo, for example, you have a large Asian population which is involved in the car and automaking industries. And so I see Brazil as probably the most greatest opportunity for us to develop a major trade relationship in combination, of those South American countries. Chile has always been the most stable. They've looked at their economy as one that has some models that we always have looked at, particularly in what we tend to call the pension fund area. And so the combination of those, I think it's a great opportunity for us, not because I'm Latino in terms of South America and Brazil, but because it's an opportunity that we've continued to ignore. And as we begin to develop better trade and trade relationships, we will avoid the opportunities of governments that tend to be very loose in terms of that opportunity. Thank you very much for letting me answer that question, and I apologize again to all of you for 95.
Next question. What will you do about I-95? No.
Put a lid on it.
There you go. Now, if I can have quicker answers to this, we have talked a little bit here about Philadelphia's virtues and how it would be sold to people abroad, but there was an interesting question from the audience, and it turns it on its head, and it says, when visitors come here, when trade missions come here to Philadelphia, what is it you think they actually see? And an accurate answer, whether that's good or bad, not the pretty painted one, unless you really believe that's what it is. Mr. Woodard, begin.
I think they see dirty streets. They see dirty streets. And Senator Williams has a plan, his Clean Streets plan, to increase the vehicle registration fee by $5 to raise $3 million per year to clean every neighborhood in the city of Philadelphia every week. And if we do that, not only do we increase property values, one, we can decrease the costs of environmental cleanup, two, but we make this a place that people want to stay and live and people want to come and enjoy. And if we can make that change, if we can clean and make sure our city is clean in all parts of the city and not just some, then we will be a real destination, a real global destination.
Ms. Abraham?
I think they want to see more environmental sensitivity. Even with our great parks, we need to be a much greener city. And I think they probably would marvel, but not in a good way, about our aging and crumbling infrastructure, our roads and bridges and the like. Have them drive down any street in Philadelphia and lose their tire. That would really get their attention. But I do believe that that's probably two of the things they see. But as I said, I've been all over the world. You tend to overlook that when you're viewing. When you're doing business, I think one of the things they would also see is a workforce that doesn't quite meet the needs of the economy of today and tomorrow. So I think that they would be concerned about the gap in workforce development.
Judge Diaz?
Yeah, on the environmental side, I agree with Williams' approach, although I'm the only one that has committed to not producing any more emissions than we have, because we're the number 130th city in Pennsylvania and the 11th 30th city in the United States. But in addition to that, I think they see a ray of hope in terms of the opportunities that we could have if we did some developments, the development of the port, the development of the Philadelphia and the Delaware ports, the continuation of combination of trade back and forth, which is sometimes it only comes one way, and the necessity of doing that. And then the expansion now that we have the Panama Canal would give us a great opportunity to bring those bigger tankers that have energy opportunities that we could sort of take back to the other side of the world. And I think they see that. And I think they see the dollar. The dollar is a strong currency, and that currency is one that people really want to trade on. And I think that's the benefit of the opportunities that we'd have in Philadelphia.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Nasrullah?
I believe they get the impression it's very provincial, it's not connected to the world in many ways, and it comes through from the direct experience that people usually have at the ground level, which is your hotel, your taxi driver, your people on the street seeking direction, all of those, signage, are direct impression of somebody coming in to know, are you on the global stage or not? I think that's one of the areas that we believe that things need to change. For example, the Center City Service District that are the ambassadors at the street level, there should be some reflection of the international community that there's a whole world out there. And of course, I agree with you about the street clean, the image of cleanup. And also the other big thing I think most people that I notice really don't see is all the assets of Philadelphia. People discover Philadelphia once they're here, which says how understated our assets are, including the barns, all the universities, the medical facilities, all of those.
Thank you. Well, let's pick up on that, because in order for that to change, it isn't just governmental policy and smiling people at the airport and mummers greeting them. You need the citizenry not to be fearful of change. And a lot of people, in my experience, resist that change because they're afraid they're going to lose their job, or someone's getting a city service that they're paying for in taxes. What do you do, Mr. Nasrullah? What would Mr. Kenney do that no mayor has done to date to try to lift the consciousness of Philadelphia so that it is more international and less fearful?
Well, I think it starts with his own record. For example, that Philadelphia itself is a sanctuary when it came to the issue of ICE. It took a stand. And that itself communicates to the broader public that the immigrants built this country. Immigrants are additive, not taking away. I think as a policy and as communication to the general public, to put out the facts, the new businesses overwhelmingly are started by foreign-born. This city has grown in the last census because of foreign-born. And all of those are facts that would show that the economy is growing, which improves everybody else's lives. And that's the communication a leader can do, and that is what is missing. And that's what would put people in the global stage. And all the communities that we have 26 different communities from the international community that reside in Philadelphia. How often do you see them together? How often do you see the mayor's office embracing that? I think that would be something that would be put in the forefront.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Woodard, what would Senator Williams do?
I think this question is at the core of his vision for One Philadelphia. And I think the reason why we often pit charter schools against neighborhood schools, or we pit Center City against neighborhoods, is because we see the benefits going one way. And there isn't buy-in from neighborhood residents. There isn't buy-in from other families around what change needs to happen and what change will look like. And so Philadelphia needs to be great in every part of the city and not just some. And when you have that vision, and when you have a focus on diversity and inclusion, and when you have a focus on making neighborhoods great as well as maintaining the great growth in Center City rather than pitting one against the other, then you have a mayor with the vision and the skill set to make that a reality. And so making Philadelphia an international city and mitigating the challenges of change is by making sure that they know, that every Philadelphian knows, that we're going to make Philadelphia great everywhere and not just in some places. And if you have that type of approach, I think you're better able as a leader to articulate that to voters and get them to buy into your plan.
Ms. Abraham?
I think this takes a mayor who has the kind of experience that I have, not only by traveling, but the kind of public service career that I've had in bringing various peoples together. For example, we had roundtables in my offices of people from all over the world getting to know each other, speaking to each other, fleshing out issues, getting to know people. It's easier to deal with people when you know who they really are. It also takes great leadership. The mayor of Philadelphia, and the mayor that I would be, is the kind of person who brings people together to make sure that everybody understands that this is a welcoming and a global city. If we're going to talk about globalism and deal with the BRIC countries, or peoples from all over the world, we have certainly seen a tremendous influx of peoples from all over the world. They have been generally welcomed here, and they are taking nobody's jobs away from them. And I think that's a fallacy that has to be quickly eliminated by me, that there are plenty of jobs in an expanding economy. And we are bringing many people here from all over the world at this university and other universities to expand on that knowledge, so that we have a tremendous international educational effort to make sure that everybody understands that we all have a rightful place in this city.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz?
Yeah, I've been involved in a lot of international issues already. I was involved in the Mexico oil rights opportunity during the Jimmy Carter administration when I was working in the White House, and I also worked on the Panama Canal treaties. I've been in Honduras and worked on many of the voting issues in Honduras. I helped develop the law school that Temple has in China, and I was there when I signed the agreement to develop that law school in China. We were trying to do the same thing in Korea and in Japan. As you know, we have Temple has one of the major institutions of learning and I've taught at that institution, and I was the first American judge to participate in the Japanese legal system. And I've trained and done educational programs of trade, both in Albania when the country opened up, and I did some legal training. And in Peru, I was a Fulbright in Peru and taught at the Catholic University and worked with all of the judges during the Fujimori shock that occurred when the inflation was growing at 400% a day. So I've been able to have entree into many, many countries that I think I could bring back some real benefit to our city, and I'm an international guy.
Thank you. I have a couple quick questions from the audience. At least one of them's quick. The other one may require some thought. Philadelphia, you're the mayor. Are you going to begin a large-scale effort to host the Summer Olympics in the year 2028? Mr. Woodard, yes or no? Large-scale effort.
Now, the senator has said yes before. The caveat is he wants it to be a regional effort and not just a city effort.
Ms. Abraham.
Nope. Can't afford it.
Mr.
Love
Diaz.
to have it.
Mr.
Can't
Diaz.
afford it.
Yes.
I'm unaware of his position, but I would think it would be an expensive task, so probably no.
All right. This is a school-related question, but it's also gets back to the questions of image of immigrants and the impact on society, how we all grow together and don't. And I'm going to boil it down because it took up the full page. But basically, name what you think are some positive contributions of Western civilization that should be taught in school. And Ms. Abraham, you may begin.
Well, I think probably the single most important product of Western civilization is our governance. The fact that we change governments just by coming into a voting booth and voting somebody in or out. I think the fact that we don't have a revolution or a war every time we change government is probably the most important thing, and it has been exported to countries where we see people standing in line in the hot sun for hours and hours and hours, waiting to cast their vote, put their finger in an inkwell, and hold their finger up proudly. In some of the countries that have never had the right of human suffrage to put their finger up and said, see, I voted. I think that is a tremendous export. This is something that has to be transported all over the world. We see what's happening in many parts of the world because we can't settle our differences peacefully. This finger in an inkwell is really, really powerful stuff.
There she is.
I believe that it's my story. It's the American dream. Someone coming from a very poor background who didn't sleep in a bed till he was 10 years old can have an opportunity to work for 3 presidents, have an opportunity to be a judge, and enter the middle class. And the reason that I decided to run for mayor is because I'm afraid that opportunity is starting to wane. Our school system is so bad that I want to be there to fix the school system so that other children would have the same American dream that I had. If we don't continue to have that American dream, I think we then fall into the structures that Lynn Abraham talked about, and I really want to make sure that the next generation is as great as the prior generations that preceded our country.
Mr. Nesratullah?
I believe the democratic systems and the law and order that promote a welcoming platform from people from everywhere to come in, integrate, and grow, and largely the story that Mr. Diaz just mentioned, my story when I came to America. All of those are part of the institution that this democracy and this Western civilization can put forward, which also takes care of other issues like corruption at every level in many foreign countries are prevalent. Yes, we have corruption too, but it is largely due to the application of law and order in a way that is uniform and broad-based.
Mr. Woodard?
I think it's the right to a public education. It's not the right to a quality public education. It should be, but it's the right to a public education. And most other nations in the world guarantee a right to public education, constitutional right. Now, while the United States Constitution does not, most of our state constitutions do. And this state constitution says it needs to provide a thorough and efficient public education system. It does not. And so Senator Williams has talked throughout this entire campaign about the need for a fully funded public education system. And the person who's best able to help deliver that is someone who understands Harrisburg and can work in the city to make sure that all parents, teachers, families, business folks all understand the importance of increasing the city's commitment to public education. We need to be a more perfect union. And the great idea about being a progressive is that we always need to improve. And so the senator is absolutely committed to making sure that every child, every family accesses a quality public education in the city of Philadelphia, regardless of what kind of school it is.
All right. Let me ask you a quick yes or no question. And I know that you don't run a business. This is a business question, but it is also a question about priorities. So in your tenure as mayor, whether that's 4 years, 8 years, you change the charter and run forever, whatever your tenure is, will there be a direct flight from Philadelphia to Beijing? And Abraham?
Absolutely.
Nelson Diaz.
We have to understand that the whole economy is changing towards the east. And so it's really important to make sure that we have that access as quickly as possible, because that's where the power frame and the growth is going. So it has to happen. Yes.
Yes.
To the east.
That's a yes.
Beijing and Bangalore.
Yes, absolutely.
Any place else that's on the definitely do list? All right, good. And now, we just have time for 1 or 2 more questions, and we're going to have closing statements. So another question from the audience: how would you take advantage of the resources of immigrants now that are in Philadelphia to promote Philadelphia? Judge Diaz.
I'm sorry?
I'll repeat it again, and this is for Judge Diaz.
Thank you.
How would you take advantage of the resources of immigrants to promote Philadelphia?
There's no question that there is an incredible ability in terms of the diversity of our communities. If you go to South Philadelphia, you've got an incredible Italian community that should be utilized. If you go to the Northeast Philadelphia, you've got a Russian and a Jewish community that should be utilized. If you go into many parts of our city, whether North Philadelphia, you've got a large Latino community who come from Colombia, from Dominican Republic, from Puerto Rico, and from many other Latino countries that should be utilized in terms of those relationships. We have not understood that those folks have connections and they're very loyal to America and want to be able to have and use that talent, that culture, and that understanding so that we can have really more and more powerful trade opportunities. And then if you go to Chinatown, that's happening today. You have some real strong relationships that are occurring in Chinatown between China and the Chinese community, which needs to be, and I would go on and on with all the different developments, because this is such a multiracial, multi-ethnic community. And we always forget about Africa and South Africa. The Sullivan Principle started right here in Philadelphia, and that's what really helped to end apartheid.
Mr. Nasrullah?
I think the resources that we can tap with the immigrant community, the assets are, number one, is intellectual, meaning people who come here, 30, 40,000 students every year, have them choose Philadelphia as their home. And we also have a whole host of doctors and engineers driving taxi cabs because their education can't be translated into American standards. Maybe there's a way to look into that. Those are standing resources. Then these people also have relatives and friends. And the EB-5 program that Ms. Abraham talked about, not many people are aware so much of that money has fueled construction in this city that created good living wages. Example, I mean, the Continental on 19th and Chestnut was built with foreign money. The Convention Center, the lobby of Duane Morris, on and on. The SEPTA MetroCard that's being done, all with foreign money. And it doesn't mean that we have to dispel the idea that foreign money coming in, somehow we lose control. We don't. We actually build on it. And that is the asset that we can tap on, the financial asset as well.
Thank you. Mr. Woodard?
Immigrant-owned small businesses in the city of Philadelphia are responsible for about 95% of neighborhood business growth. 95%. And so the one thing that we can do is make sure that we integrate the work of our Department of Commerce, our planning department, as well as L&I. These are small things that we can do that improve our economy, that improve cultural competency in our government, but also provide local civic pride and attract international investment and attention to the city.
Thank you. Ms. Abraham?
I think a couple of things. First of all, with our airport, our ports, our rails, and our roads, we should be exporting much more than we are now. We're just so far behind on that. And what I believe that we can do is to make sure that we have investments by tapping into all the countries that do business here or come here to make sure that we go to the people who have those desires and make it easier for them to come and invest in their real estate, grow businesses. I talked about EB-5 before. And obviously, we want to open more consular offices here because we have this rich population for which we don't have consular offices. That increases our inward migration and our business outlook. And on top of that, we should take advantage of all the young people who come to schools here all over the city of Philadelphia and vicinity and work through the governor's office in Pennsylvania to increase that cultural capital that we need to make sure that our country and our state is a net exporter of all the goods and services while welcoming this rich diversity of communities in Philadelphia.
Thank you. And now it's time for closing remarks, and we will begin at the far end of the table. We began this afternoon at this end. We'll begin with Mr. Woodard, who is talking for Tony Williams. And will you please give a closing statement, please?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much
and
for
you
having
get 90
us.
seconds, by the way.
90 seconds, actually. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to stand in today. Senator Williams is an emeritus board member of International House of Philadelphia. He has served on a number of committees and a number of boards that are focused on inclusion, diversity, and international understanding and tolerance. On our campaign staff, we have individuals who speak 7 different languages. He has been someone who has been focused on making sure that Philadelphia doesn't just compete with Boston, but that it competes with Beijing, with an eye towards becoming a global city and not a parochial one. In order to do that, we have to do a couple of things. We have to have a vision for one Philadelphia, a city that's great everywhere and doesn't leave anyone behind but takes everyone forward. He has the skill set to do it. For the last 26 years, whether he served as chairman of the Philadelphia delegation in Harrisburg, bringing resources back to the city of Philadelphia, he's been fighting for all of us. As second-ranking Democrat of the state Senate, bringing back $250 million for public education in Philadelphia, he's been fighting for all of us. And as mayor, he'll fight in City Hall to make sure that Philadelphia doesn't, again, compete with those who are our peers, but competes with those on the world stage by investing in our people, by educating and graduating people who are prepared for the global economy, and for those who understand not just Philadelphians, not just Pennsylvanians, but understand what it takes to travel and what it takes to be great in any part of the world. A leader with that vision, a leader with that background and skill set, a former small business owner who attracts a diverse type of staff, that's the type of mayor we'll need to take us into a global Philadelphia. And on Tuesday, May 19th, I hope he earns your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And you may go. Mr. Nasrullah for Jim Kennedy.
My closing remarks are drawn from the information I have, being working closely with candidate Jim Kenney, who hopefully will prevail on May 19th. It really, if you look closely, his approach has been very practical. With him, what you get is a practical, relatively straightforward approach to fixing the issues that face the city. And it starts from the idea of think globally and act locally. He has been a long-standing member of the Welcoming Center, so he really understands that issue, how that might help Philadelphia get stronger. But more important than that, economic conditions needs to be changed, as well as education needs to be improved. And he has really connected the dots on the economic issues that drive it. For example, he has a keen understanding of clusters of economic activity, like neighborhood strips, as well as functional clusters, like the shipping container business. He does focus on community colleges doing job training that are aligned with employment, not just training for the purposes of training. Same with the pre-K, preparing children early into the job skills. All of these stage a comeback for Philadelphia as an economic base that capitalizes on ports, railways, highway access to make Philadelphia better, so it's better for all the communities, not just Center City or the neighborhood, but for all.
Thank you, sir.
Should,
Mr. Diaz.
I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity, despite the fact that I was so late. But this is a passion that I have in terms of international opportunities and international development. In 1973, I filed a lawsuit that brought about some bilingual ballots. So when you go vote on May 19th for me, you'll be able to vote for me in Spanish. And so that's really, or if you live in the Northeast, you'll be able to vote for me in Russian. And other languages that we've been able to get that to happen. And in 1974, I was the advocate that developed bilingual education opportunities in the public school systems here. And I also filed a lawsuit with regard to that. And I was able to reauthorize the last bilingual education bill that came in Congress in 1978. I truly believe that education is the only equalizer for all of our communities. We have 80 institutions of higher learning in this city, and EDS and MEDS are the most capable opportunity. People come from all over the world just to come here to get an education from a Philadelphia surrounding institution. We have some of the best minds in the world, and those best minds, we should come together to figure out how we make Philadelphia more of an international city so that we can develop that high-tech industry opportunities that we right now are looking at near the 30th Street yard, where Drexel has have a mine where they can connect because of the train and the speed train between Washington, D.C. and New York. And we have the privilege, I think, that if we develop some venture capital, if we develop some opportunities within those institutions, that we can incubate some of those opportunities and businesses and have these multi-language capabilities and be able then to export these minds throughout the world. We can be the center of development of high tech and the center of development of science and education throughout the world, because we have that capability. And thank you very much, host, for being so kind to me and cutting me off when I should be cut off. Thank you so much.
No, that's why we let you talk. That's fine. Nobody should be cut off. That's the burden of having a lot of candidates, and even though you're exhausted, all of you, so little time really for people.
But this is exciting, by the way. This is exciting.
So with that in mind, Ms. Abraham.
Yes, thanks, Steve, and thanks to Global Philadelphia and all of the sponsors here today. I think it's time for Philadelphia to step out of the shadows created by its own sense of perhaps insecurity or not being worthy. I'm running for mayor to become the leader of the next great American city, because I think Philadelphia is fully capable of that. To make sure that Philadelphia does have that opportunity to achieve that American dream, everybody in it has to have the opportunity as well. When I grew up in Philadelphia, every immigrant from all over the world, and I certainly lived in an immigrant community, knew that it was possible to rise from poverty well into the middle class to secure his or her part of the American dream. We had quality education. We had jobs. We had security. We had a peaceful and quiet city. But things have changed, and not always for the better. While we are a wonderful American city, we have to be better. A better education system, job-trained people for the jobs of today and the future, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math in our schools, and children achieving by making sure that we have fully allotted funding from Harrisburg and make sure that Philadelphia steps up to the plate and pays its fair share. I believe that the job of mayor doesn't to become just one person stepping up. I am not a person who believes that City Hall is for sale. What people want is transformational leadership, and I think I bring that. My experience shows that I am trusted, proven, courageous, experienced, I have grit, determination, great vision, and great passion for this city. This city's best days are ahead of it, and I want to be leading it. And Lynn Abraham is not for sale. City Hall is not for sale. I want to be nobody's mayor but yours, and so on May the 19th, next Tuesday. I ask for your support and your vote so that we can together, with the entire world community, build Philadelphia into an economic, cultural, and leadership powerhouse. Nobody's mayor but yours. Thank you.
And one big round of applause for all the candidates, please. I want to thank Omar and thank you, Hassan, for being here as surrogates. And Judge Diaz, thank you very much, sir. And Madam DA, thank you for being here as well. And to you for such a great audience. Your mothers would be proud. Thank you to the Global Philadelphia and, of course, to CDI and to the World Affairs Council and International House. Thank you. Have a great afternoon. Don't forget to vote a week for today or work on the campaign of your choice. Thank you.
It's a wrap. We just completed the Global Philadelphia Association Mayoral Forum. And our objective was to showcase the fact that Philadelphia is an extremely global city, could be much more global with the right amount of energy, efforts, all of us pulling together to make sure that this happens. Global Philadelphia is an umbrella association covering all the folks who are doing global work in the city. It includes educators, it includes institutions, organizations, cultural entities, and individuals, all of whom are committed to what is going on globally in Philadelphia. Together, we make a much more powerful noise than we do individually. This fall, we are putting on Global Philly 2015, 60 days of international events designed to showcase how global Philadelphia is. In addition, at Global Philadelphia, we are engaged in making Philadelphia the first ever World Heritage City in the United States. This is an enormous deal, a huge brand, a rallying cry for our citizenry, and an opportunity for Philadelphia to really stand out. There are 266 of these World Heritage Cities. We would be the only one in the United States. If you're interested in learning more, reach out to us, check out our website, globalphiladelphia.org, and join the party, because not only are we successful, but we also like to have fun. Thank you.